So I came home and told Lee that I had this idea of which she's heard 1,000 times from me.
I'm sure.
And so she's like, oh, you got this, what's the idea? I tell her the idea and she goes, oh, that's a big idea.
Welcome to the Work Undone podcast, a show where I sit down with maker entrepreneurs to find out what it really takes to start a business focused on physical product from the folks who are actually in the thick of it. I'm your host, Justin Hawkins, a designer, artist, entrepreneur living in lovely Portland, Oregon. Before we get started here, I just want to let everybody know there's going to be a bit of background noise. I'm recording in my work studio space, and there's a train that goes by, likes to make itself known, and I've got some neighbors who are makers, and they'll be banging around a little bit. This episode, I sit down with Matt Capozzi of North Drinkware. If you're not familiar with these products, you should definitely check them out. Go to workundone.com and see some of the photos so you can get context for what these things look like. But basically, it's a hand-blown pint glass with a mountain in the bottom of it. It's really brilliant. Did a great Kickstarter, was really successful. Definitely one of my favorite handmade products out there right now. Little context, we recorded this episode in the fall of 2017. So a few months back, just before the holiday season. Be sure to listen to the end of the episode where I'll list out some of the products that North Drinkware has put out since we chatted, as well as some exciting new stuff they have coming up. So without further ado, let's jump right into the interview. So welcome. Thanks for coming.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me. Yeah. I'm so used to saying us because it's me, Nick, and Lee. So
that's right. I'm sorry we can't have all three of them here.
No, it's great.
Only got the one microphone. But yeah, I've been wanting to talk with you for a long time. I know we've kind of chatted over the years, but I guess I always started off with asking people what their creative background was growing up and kind of where they come from, and did that have any influence on where you are now?
Yeah. That was an interesting question. I think, my creative background, I guess, starts, I grew up in New Jersey outside of New York City, skateboarding, mountain biking, rock climbing, mostly spending time getting out of Jersey. And through that community and sort of mindset, I got there was a lot of artwork and a lot of street culture and a lot of people doing their own thing, a lot of independence. So that was sort of happening in part of my life. My mom has always been an artist and drawing and painting a little bit, and my dad's always sort of tinkered with old cars and old boats and things like that. And so that sort of combination of like this culture that I'm into, we make a lot of stuff and art and street art, that kind of world. And then I like to make or tinker with stuff at home with my dad. I started making skate ramps and building climbing walls and stuff like that as a kid. And so that was sort of the early roots. And then I had this friend who lived a couple doors down. Jeff Hampman is his name, and he's a great artist that's down in Oakland right now. And he went to RISD, and so I'm in high school. He's 3 years older than me. He goes to RISD. I went up and visit him. He's studying printmaking at RISD, and then like your mind explodes,
Sure.
To be like a high school kid, like going to see that whole world, and
man.
It was bananas. And he was studying printmaking, and he was working with Shepard Fairey before, like, it was like when Andre the Giant Has a Posse stickers were just starting.
Yeah.
And so he was pulling screens on all those and would just send me sheets of those stickers, and like this concept of like, oh, you could just start something, you can make it, and then just give it away to your friends, and like that's a thing. Like, so that was kind of my earliest like glimmer of like, whoa, you can do this.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, so that's kind of my loose creative background.
That guy inspired a lot of people.
It's true. That's true. That's for sure.
So we worked together at Cinco. How did you get to working as industrial designer, right?
Yeah, so I'm the product experience director over at Cinco. So I lead a team of like 6 to 8 industrial designers, and my background is in that sort of product design, product development side of things.
Did you go to RISD?
No, I wish I did. I went to a school in Western Mass called Hampshire College, and at Hampshire you kind of design your own curriculum, and so I put together this, what I put together is essentially part mechanical engineering and part industrial design. I didn't know those were things
Right.
until much later in my career. But so I studied a lot of engineering, a lot of design, and a lot of business. And so those three things together, sort of entrepreneurship, product design, and engineering together, kind of put together a good path for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how long have you been working as an industrial designer?
I've been working at Cinco for about 8 years, leading the design team there. And then most of my roles before Cinco were working in-house at brands. So being the director of product for groups or leading product management teams or things like that. And so I worked in-house at Burton and Nixon and Nike and Gravis, along with others over the years, doing that. So that working on the in-house side was really interesting. And then now working on the agency side for the last 8 years has been super fun.
Yeah, definitely informative, I'm sure, to be on both sides of it. So is North your first company that you tried to start, or that you started?
It is the first sort of official company. I think, coming off the story of my friend Jeff going to RISD and studying screen printing. So I was like, I'm going to do screen printing because I could do that in my bathroom and make screens. So I started making stickers in high school in the basement and selling T-shirts and sweatshirts and hats and stickers out of my locker in high school. So like that was my first I think I can do that.
Nice.
Nothing super formal. And then in college, my thesis project at Hampshire was developing a seating system for paraplegic people to be able to ride a snowboard.
Oh,
and
wow.
So it was an interesting design, ergonomics, and sort of equipment study. So I designed that and worked on some designs in that and sort of built a brand around that a little bit as a sort of school project. I didn't turn it into a real brand, but that was sort of another sort of step closer to that. And then, like I was saying earlier, most of the brands that I worked for are entrepreneurial in spirit, at least in the groups that I was a part of. And so I didn't start any of those, but it was a big part of growing some of those brands.
Nice. Scratch that itch.
Yeah. And so that was like, oh yeah, this is a thing. And then North we started in 2014. It was really the first brand that I've like formally started as an LLC and like as its own company. So that's been super fun.
Yeah. How did that come about? So you got a job. You work 9 to 5. You're the director. You're doing all right.
Yeah.
So then your partner, remind me of his name again? Nick. He's your coworker.
Yep.
You guys work together, and then your wife's a part of it as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So Nick and I work together on the product team. Nick Ramirez is he's a mechanical engineer by trade, great guy, and we're sort of working together on product design work, and agency life is amazing. You get to work with great clients. We get to work on cool ideas.
Totally.
We rarely on the agency side get to be a part of a product all the way through manufacturing and production and delivering to a customer. My previous jobs I'd worked, that was the side of the world that I lived on. I would often call Kirk and the crew at Cinco to help with design work. I'd been working with Cinco on and off for 15 years, at all these other brands. But then I was going to the factory, making the things and working through that whole process. And so it had been a long time since I had made something. And Nick and I were having beers one night. We were both feeling like we should do something. We should make something. So we were brainstorming ideas and over beers right down the street here at Lucky Lab. And we were like, this idea, like I recently saw that like you can download 3D data, USGS data. So like I was like, oh, that's a thing. And I'd taken our product team to a glass blowing outing. I like to take the team we try to go every couple months and go do something that nobody's ever done before. Learn something completely new.
Yeah, totally.
And so we went to Elements Glass, which is over here in Northwest Portland. And we made these bowls, and they gave us a tour of the place, and we learned a little bit about like very thin level of understanding of glass blowing. And then so we had that in the back of our heads, and we were drinking these beers, and we were like, it'd be cool if we can do something in the craft beer space that's blowing up. I wonder if we can do something that, we saw this like 3D data thing that was interesting. If we could do something that's really meaningful to people here, that's made here. And then a woman ordered a bottle of wine next to us, and it has a little bump in the bottom of the bottle of wine, and I was like, what if that was Mount Hood? Like, because I think we can get the data, and then you think about it from a manufacturing standpoint, and you're like, oh, the draft is going to work. Like, I think you could do that. Like, it should work. So we came home that night, and I shared the idea with Lee, and I was like, hey, we had this idea over beers. And
Lee's your wife?
This is my wife. Yeah,
okay.
So Lee Capozzi is my wife. Nick Ramirez is our third partner. And so I came home and told Lee that I had this idea, of which she's heard 1,000 times from me.
Oh, sure.
And so she's like, oh, you got this, what's the idea? I tell her the idea, and she goes, oh, that's a big idea. And I was like, oh shit, she's never said that before.
Whoa,
like,
really?
She's never been like, well, I mean, it's always like, that's a cool idea, like, you know.
But that's a big, wow.
So that was like so I called Nick immediately. I was like, hey, Lee said she thinks it's a big idea. So like, I think this might be a real idea.
That's awesome.
So that was kind of like, that was the kernel of the original spark. And then we moved from there into like, okay, well, if we're going to do this, like, let's start prototyping, and kind of went from there.
So talk about prototyping.
This is funny. So the glass blowers that we work with are amazing, but they never really made anything like what we were thinking about. So really, we were starting kind of ground up, and so we started by making. We designed the glass, and we made 3D prints on a MakerBot, which is kind of a low fidelity 3D printer, and the 3D prints looked cool, but it's a positive of the glass. Mm-hmm. And so then Nick has a lot of experience on the ceramics side of things, and so we made a mold out of plaster. We made a plaster mold of the 3D print, dried that out, took that to the glass blower and said, I think you can blow glass into this like at least once or twice. Would you guys be into trying to figure this out? And so the guys were super accommodating, and we, traded beers for nights and weekends in the glass shop trying to blow glass into these plaster molds that almost immediately like erode and decay and fall apart. But
right.
So we would go from like mixing up plaster in the garage, making the molds, like bring it over to the glass studio, dry out the mold, put the glass into it, blow it, to just see if this idea even looks cool or is going to be an idea.
So you made a rubber mold from the 3D print, so you could do the plaster more times, or how were you doing the plaster?
So we did the 3D print is a positive of the glass, so it looks just like the glass, but it's solid plastic.
Got it. Okay.
And then we basically poured plaster around that, and then took that piece of plastic out. So now we have the opposite of the mold, the negative.
Okay.
And then we would blow glass into that hole.
And you were just using plaster, which isn't.
It doesn't hold up. You could make one or two glasses out of it, and they looked horrible, and like it barely worked. But we were like, I think, and again, like, in that sort of making process, you go through what is going to be a failure, but you're like, will this teach me? Will I learn a little bit? And so it was like, yeah, like this looks horrible, but like this concept I think is going to work. And so at every step we kept being like, well, we'll just keep going until we hit a wall. And so that's what we did. And so we just kept prototyping and sort of learning more about what worked, what didn't work, just so much trial and error. I think we probably made like 15 different plaster molds that we went through to just try to continue it. So we were trying to see, like, could we get a glass that actually looks decent? We were hoping that we could do that, like, before the original goal was to just make like 100 glasses for our friends for Christmas.
Really?
We were like, this would be cool if we could do that.
Let's try that.
Let's just try. And so let's see how little we can put into this. Just see if
I
it's
didn't realize
idea.
that.
So that was
so each of these 15, are you changing things, tweaking things a little bit differently in the 3D model that or are you doing just changing things in the plaster, or what? Everything, or all the above?
That's a good question.
Kind of tweaking.
A lot of the iteration was around the design itself. Was like, how much radius, how tall do we want the glass, and then it was also like learning about how glass blowing works. Like the mold is a lot taller than the final glass is now. The first molds were like, all right, we want the glass this high, so we'll make the mold this high, and then you're just like, oh, this isn't going to work at all. So the first glasses we made were like, they looked like miniature glasses, like it just wasn't right at all. So evolutions in design, and then honestly, because you can only blow into the mold once or twice, we were making like 4 at a time, so you could try 4 times instead of just once. One mold, you go in there, blow once, and you're like, well, it's torched. Like that was a waste of the whole day just to be able to try and maybe get one glass. So that was the sort of plaster part of it. It was a really interesting part of the process, and really hands-on and messy, and made some really wonky glasses, but learned a lot. And that sort of set us up to say, okay, let's make a more professional mold. And then really all the while we were, like I said, we were just kind of planning on just making them for our friends around. We wanted to make them around the holiday of 14 is when we were messing around with that. Summer of 14 is when we were sort of started the ideation and prototyping.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
Yeah.
So at some point you decided, like, okay, we can probably turn this into a business. Or
yeah.
how did you go from let's make a few for our friends to, like, were they like, oh, well, the minimums are actually 1,000, so
that's a good one. Yeah, that, I think what we went through was we were gonna make a few hundred, and then we said, I think everybody we showed the idea to or told about the idea, because they're 3D data, so we could pull renderings of it really easily. So
oh right.
So we had I had assets of like, imagine this, like, see how amazing it would look if it was real glass and beautiful. Like, this is wonky and crappy, but like you can get the idea.
Right.
Just to friends and family, and everybody was like, this is really an interesting idea. And so then we were getting a lot of positive feedback from our friends, and so we were like, I don't know, maybe we put it up on Kickstarter, like maybe we see if more people like it. So we made that decision in the fall of 14, and we were going to launch in like November, but we couldn't get our act together, and like we were just talking about earlier, like editing video and sound is super hard.
Yeah.
We did everything ourselves. Like, the other thing with North that's funny is working with amazing agencies for my whole career, like, it's just me, Nick, and Lee, period. And we have a Pavlina, who's an amazing friend over at Senko, that helps shoot photos for us. But other than that, like, we do everything. So we're like, it's a hack video that we did on Nick's camera. My wife recorded the voiceover in our daughter's bedroom with blankets over her head to try to cut down on
awesome.
Audio, to make the audio sound a little bit better. But like, that whole process ended up taking a lot longer than we thought it would.
Yeah.
So we were like, we're not ready for November. And we're like, we'll just launch it when we're ready. So we ended up launching on Kickstarter in February of 15. And right before then, we had gotten a mold that was a better mold, but it wasn't great. But those are the glasses that you see in the Kickstarter video. So that was like a little bit better quality, way better than the plaster stuff, but not nearly as good as what we're doing today. And so that was kind of an interesting process. So that's what kind of led us. I think all the while we were like, yeah, this could be a business, but the idea for the business in the earliest stages was, we'll just run it out of our basement. Like, we know enough about production and logistics and getting packaging together and all that stuff. So we're like, we can do all that, but let's just do it on a micro scale in our basement, and we'll just package ship orders out of our house. So that was the plan, really, going into Kickstarter, was like, we only asked for enough money to make like 100 glasses, really. Or a few hundred glasses. I think we asked for $15,000. And so that was like, okay, that we can buy a better mold, we can buy some equipment, we can pay for inventory, and we can make a small run of glasses, which was the hope,
And then you exceeded that by how many times?
We did. We exceeded that by a lot. I have a little thing here. I want to get my numbers right. But we ended up raising $531,000 in the 30 days. So really, like 2 days into the Kickstarter campaign, it had gotten bananas. Like, I think we hit our goal in 5 hours. We had hit $15,000, and then by day 2 it was $250,000 and $350,000 by day 3, and it just kept going. So that was like, holy smokes, this is not going to work out of our basement anymore. Like, that was pretty crazy.
Yeah, I remember Tim and I, my old roommate and our old coworker, were sitting on the porch one night, and we were looking at your Kickstarter, or we were both like, hey, did you see the Kickstarter? And we're both like, how in the hell are they going to manage to make all those and get them out the door? They're totally screwed. And then we we've heard all these horror stories about like
totally so many people,
so many Kickstarters.
Yeah.
Like, oh well, I failed because I was actually too successful.
Yeah, exactly. It's a big problem. Like I think a lot of people, if you have an idea that ends up going big, I think the big thing that we had going for us was all of our careers independently have been at big brands. Nick is a mechanical engineer in-house at Jawbone and other giant consumer electronics brands. I've worked in-house developing product at Nike and Burton and other big brands. Lee has managed PR and marketing for Now and Burton and many other brands over the years and been a publisher of magazines. And so we have all the skills at a big brand scale. What we were excited to do was like, let's do something teeny. I've never done teeny. And then so when it ended up blowing up, we were like, oh, well, at least we know what the things are to do, which was really helpful for us. And I think that's where a lot of people fail. And it's been one of the biggest pieces of advice that I give to people that are going to go on a platform that has the ability to go big. Like if it does go big, at least have a plan in place of how you'd be able to manage it, because you see so many great ideas just get exploded by a lack of experience really in that operational and development side of things.
Yeah. Well, and it seems like you did have a plan, because like I said, Tim and I were on the porch when we're looking at it and we're like, oh, but wait, like here's it max at this point maxes out here, and then it goes to this next stage, but that stage is 2 months away, so they can produce the thing. So people they have expectations when they're purchasing. Where it's like
that was our fail-safe a little
early
bit.
bird special sort of a thing that they do, where you can kind of like have those limits, and that was brilliant. That's the first time I'd seen that.
Well, it was a forcing function. We met with our glassblower, and he was like, "You got to turn this thing off. This is bananas. Like we can't make all these glasses."
Oh, so you switched that.
So that was on the third day of the campaign.
Okay.
So we had like secretly, we were like, all right, let's just secretly do the math. Like, what would the number have to be that'd be so many that we couldn't make them by June, which was the date that we said we'd deliver by.
Got it.
And so we did the math, and we were like, all right, it's about, if we hit $250,000, like if we go above that, we can't make those by the date that we told people we'd ship them.
Right.
And then that happened on between the second and the third day. And so our glassblower was like, he was like, you got to turn this thing off. This is crazy. We're never going to be able to do this. So I was like, all right, let's just brainstorm. What are different things that we could do? Like, when could we make them by? So then what we did is we sold out the perks that were the June deliveries really early. And then put up new perks that were like still capturing people, but these aren't going to deliver until the end of September.
Right.
And so then that gave us like, okay, now it's February, and we now have till September to make what ended up being about 13,000 glasses, so that was kind of that worked really well for us, and that was a way to manage the sort of chaos. But I mean, there's so many of these like forks in the road that sort of are like
unforeseen.
We're done. What are we gonna do? And you're like, build an off ramp. We're gonna go over here and come around.
Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't ever think about you making that decision or change during the campaign.
Oh, for sure.
Like editing the campaign as it's happening.
Yeah. You can update the campaign while it's live,
That's great.
And like add new perks or things like that.
Yeah.
The other thing that's really interesting, Kickstarter platform is so dynamic. It's constantly evolving. So, since we've been up, which was years ago now, like it's changed a lot. So there's a lot more features and functions. And even in the period of the campaign that we had, there were things that were there by the end that weren't there in the beginning. That was like, oh, if we knew if they had launched that feature a month ago, we would have changed a little bit of how we would have done things.
Oh, interesting.
But that's the nature of constantly evolving tech right now. But
yeah,
that's
totally.
Fun. Yeah, well,
that's great, man. That's so exciting.
Yeah, it was a crazy ride. That's for sure.
Yeah. So the state of the company now.
So it's great. It's still the sort of three of us. It's and we've continued to expand. So let's see. So we launched in 2014, and then we ended up fulfilling all of our Kickstarter backers orders by like the end of September, early October, maybe first week of October-ish. We were a little late on a few people, but we felt pretty good about the whole thing, that we bid it all off.
Yeah.
And then in November of 14 we launched, or 15 we launched the Washington pint. So that was
Rainier.
Mount Rainier in the base.
Yeah.
And so that was really exciting. But again, like we're like, all right, we made like 200, like it's November, and they sold out in 2 days, gone. And you're just like, oh, well, now we're sold out until like basically February the next year. Like we just didn't have any inventory.
Right.
It was Christmas, like we couldn't catch up, and so we were just like basically just sold out again right after we had launched.
Sold out everything. Like you don't have Mount
anything.
Hood
No, we sold out of
glasses.
everything.
You don't have.
Yeah.
Because you launched with Mount Hood. That was it. Right?
Yeah, we just launched with Mount Hood on Kickstarter, but then we didn't really forecast or build image. We didn't really know what we're doing, so we're just like, they're for sale. And then they would all sell out, and we're like, oh, yeah, we can't keep up with this.
Right.
So then we started to stockpile inventory a little bit. We kind of, we had a website up, but it wasn't fully functioning, and we were just like, all right, let's like relaunch in January, February with more inventory available, and then go from there. So there was a lot of pent-up demand, and then in 16, February-ish, January, February of 16 is when we sort of had more inventory available, relaunched with like a bulk of inventory, could capture some sales, and then we were kind of off to the races from there. And then we launched in April of 15 or 16. We launched Half Dome for California, so the California pint, and then we launched tumblers for all the glasses, the whiskey size.
Oh yeah.
And then this year we launched. We did a collaboration with the James brand back in holiday, and then we launched Vermont and Colorado this year.
Oh, really?
Which has been really exciting.
Nice.
So again, I think short story is state of the company is great. We're continuing to evolve, growing new mountains, and trying to figure out where the idea goes from here.
Nice.
Yeah, which has been fun.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And it's still just the three of you, or
Yeah.
how are you guys rolling with it now?
Yeah, well, I mean, we have amazing partners. Like, I think, because we've been really fortunate, I think because of the success on Kickstarter, it sort of forced us, like I was saying earlier, to sort of jump into, like, big boy business. Like, this is not, like, we had to sort of jump into, like, we got to be a little bit more formal and serious with how we set this all up. Because of that, we work with an amazing 3PL group that's based out in Hillsborough called Premier Packaging. And so they pick, pack, and ship all of our orders. Elements, our glass blowing facility here in Portland, over in Northwest, makes all of our glasses. So we have a truck that comes to the glass blowing facility every week and picks up glasses and brings it to the warehouse. And the packaging is all made here in Portland as well, from a paper tube company over in Northeast. And they ship the tubes over to the guys at the 3PL, and they just pick, pack, and ship orders, and I build all the web stuff and manage all the social, and so that's it. It's just the three of us. And so we sort of divvy up all the tasks of running a business, which now they're getting a little bit more complex as we get bigger, but still pretty manageable with three people, between divvying up marketing, sales, finance, design, and operations. Like we all have had enough experience doing that at bigger brands that we have those abilities, or at least understandings of what it is to then go, like, I've never actually set up QuickBooks for a company, but I think that's what I'm going to learn how to do now. So setting all that up, and it's been fun.
So are any of you guys full time on this though?
No, actually, no. We're all part-time still on it.
Wow.
So that's the other.
Does that mean full-time jobs, part-time North?
Yeah, more or less. Like Nick and I both work a slightly reduced schedule at Cinco. And Kirk and the crew at Cinco has been super supportive of this whole project.
That's
great. So we work a slightly reduced schedule, but still manage that whole product team and that whole book of business, and constantly managing that whole pipeline, and then run North really as a side hustle. And then Lee, my wife, leads all of our sales and marketing efforts, and also keeps our family organized together and moving forward. So we're all busy. And on top of all that, Lee and I moved down to Bend.
Yeah, you said that. That's crazy.
About just over a year and a half ago. Yeah,
that's great.
So I come back up here to work at Cinco, and then work remotely down in Bend, and then work on North when I'm down in Bend, and on the days that I'm not doing Cinco. So
wow.
Definitely.
Guess that means you're gonna have to do a bachelor.
Yeah,
Yes.
that would be pretty sweet.
I mean, it's required now. It's your city.
It is our home turf.
Yeah.
It's definitely high on our list. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So moving forward with North, it sounds like you're just kind of constantly putting out new mountains. Is that, you said you're growing mountains, which I love that phrase.
Yeah, exactly. We grow mountains. We've been growing mountains. I think the thing that's so special about I think that's been so interesting about living into our idea is realizing how regional the story is.
Mm-hmm.
People love their mountains and they love their local places that mean a lot to them. And so trying to find those places that are really meaningful to mountain loving audiences that overlap the craft beer community and the craft cocktail and cider community, like the craft spirits as it overlaps mountains and craft products, like that's kind of our happy space.
Yeah.
So it's been finding other markets and building products for those markets, like Vermont and Colorado have been really fun to see grow.
Yeah.
And continuing to support our home turf, like Oregon and Washington are still really successful for us, and so it's finding ways to make that fresh and new. This holiday we're really focused on a successful holiday, which takes a lot of focus and energy. But we just launched the Cobalt collection for this holiday, which is a blue series of glasses. So again, finding ways to sort of bring some new takes and new inspirations to some ideas that are already out there are really fun. We just do that as a limited series, and when they're gone, they're gone.
Right.
And we'll have other ideas down the road. So,
what was why blue?
Just to celebrate those, I think, there are certain colors of the glasses that look great. We've prototyped the whole rainbow. And we did an obsidian collection over the spring, summer that was really cool. These black glasses that were really beautiful.
That's not great.
And so that was really fun. And when we prototyped, we made the blue ones. And then this summer, actually, during the eclipse, we did a solar collection that we called it. We didn't make very many glasses at all, but we did sort of a range of colors that went from dark to that dark gray into like a burnt orange, into a sort of amber yellow, and then into a blue to sort of celebrate around the eclipse time frame. Sort of like the gradient of colors that you'd see over the eclipse. And so we like to find like sort of natural inspirations for our ideas that tie back to our story a little bit. And the blue glasses looked insane when we did them in that solar collection, so we were like, I wonder if we can do those again, but maybe we do a brighter blue that's sort of like those bluebird days of winter. Like we have those magical days on the mountains where the sun is shining, you get that bright blue sky, and we were like, that would be a fun holiday little collection to do. So that was the Cobalt collection that we put together. So that was the sort of inspiration for it. And then again, it's a way to sort of bring some new energy and excitement to what we're doing this holiday, until we get to more mountains and more ideas. So yeah.
So speaking of holidays, what is your guys' schedule like? I know a lot of the makers have the craziest holiday. They make a lot of the money during the holidays. Are you guys going to I know I'm jumping around on the questions.
That's all right. I'm just gonna
are you guys going to these what are they called?
The maker fairs and stuff and everything.
All the sort of holiday.
We don't travel to a lot of the maker fair stuff. We work because we started on Kickstarter. We have sort of this like natively digital audience. So most of our sales are happening direct. So curating our online story is really important. And then we have amazing retail partners that we work with that are pretty select. We don't have very many, but they're all fantastic. And so over the holiday seasons, what we try really hard to do is support those retailers and wholesalers that have partnered with us to give them the tools that they need to sort of win as big as they can over the holiday time frame, and then manage our own direct business. With that, there's a lot of work that goes into that, building press and stories and setting up, interest and developing new products and launching all of that and sort of keeping the stoke level high through the holidays for all of those groups is really important to us. So it is crazy, but it's a little bit more planned. I think this holiday is really the first holiday season that we've taken forecasting a little bit more seriously. So like, we made a budget for the year and we're like, how are we doing every month against, what do we think we're going to do? What did we do last year this time? What do we think we're going to do this year? Keeping better track of that, which we've been surprisingly good at. That's been working really well. So with that, we were able to we started planning for holiday in like July. So that's when we started building product for this holiday season. So
but your lead time on product creation, or for them to actually produce the product,
it takes a while. It takes a while. So
and so this would be, I'm trying to do the math here, this would be year 3 as far as like holiday season.
This is our 3rd holiday season. And again, we feel like we're a little bit more strategic going into it, which has been great. It's our partners are jamming. We're getting big days at the warehouse, packing up and shipping a lot of glasses, and our retailers are selling through product and want more product. So like just making sure that you're sort of putting out all the fires and keeping it stoked and keeping everybody happy is definitely that's our holiday hustle. Rather than traveling to shows independently. And I think that's been, again, because we have such a great backer community through the Kickstarter days, and that's expanded to be a pretty substantial group, and we have great retail partners. We can kind of lean on those guys to help support them as best as we can through the holiday seasons.
That reminds me, I wanted to ask, so you just did the one Kickstarter campaign, right? You haven't done
subsequent Kickstarters
no. For different mountains.
We haven't. No,
had enough community and enough interest to just put it out there, and
we've been super fortunate. I think from our original launch, we haven't gone back to Kickstarter to raise more money. We have done some pre-order stuff. That Obsidian collection I was telling you about, we did in the summer, but that was just direct through our website, and it, pre-ordering is great because you get a sense of what people want before you have to make it. It also takes a lot of management, As I tell people, I joke that like some of our Kickstarter backers, I feel like every one of our backers moved 3 times from the time that we took their money and the time that we shipped glasses, because everybody's like, can you update my address? I moved again from here to here. And you're like, yeah, for sure. Like, go back. So for 5,000 people. So like that got to be, for us, we got a little gun shy from like pre-ordering because of the management that it took. But we're starting to play around with it a little bit more. And again, the tools have evolved tremendously since we did that on Kickstarter.
Right, there's
so
probably
now
some sort of
it's amazing
thing
now.
on the Kickstarter where they can just update their own address.
I would assume so now.
And
because
you just
that was
then grab it before you ship everything to make sure there's all the updates.
That was the trick, was like the advice was like, make sure you don't download the address list until like the day you're shipping. So you're like, last call, we're shipping.
That's smart.
So we've only done that one Kickstarter campaign. We've talked about it, and we're still great friends with the crew at Kickstarter, and we became really good friends with them through the campaign, and continue to sort of partner with them on little projects and stuff from time to time, but not as official Kickstarter projects.
Right.
Yeah.
Were you one of the more successful ones, or?
Portland. There's been so many successful Kickstarter campaigns in Portland.
Yeah.
But that year at that time, like we were pretty successful. That was around the time that the Coolest Cooler guys were also like in the $14 million kind of like megalopolis. Too successful. Yeah. Again.
Did they ever ship that?
I think there's a complicated story around that one. Yeah.
I imagine so.
Yeah.
So do you say, back to holiday real quick, would you say that most of your sales happen in the holiday, like in that season?
Yeah. 30 to 40% of our sales probably happen between November and December. Our products are amazing gifts.
Sure,
of
course.
Travels easy. They're packaged individually. There's no sizes. Like all of the things that make a good gift.
Right.
And they're not. They're really expensive for glasses, but they're not too expensive to give a gift that's $45. So, that works really well for us. So we have a lot of sales in the holiday season for sure.
Yeah.
And the thing that's nice is, it's not 90%. Which would be like super spooky, but it is a big percentage.
Well, you can
us.
take a vacation the rest of the year.
I wish. It's funny. It takes, we are fortunate enough to have a lot of interest in sort of a constant rhythm of press and storytelling and new ideas that we launch through the year to sort of keep to keep it sort of even. but it takes a lot of management the whole year, and then really in holiday is when it starts to be more profitable. But so that's exciting. That's our cycle is what we're learning is it's a holiday brand.
Yeah.
Gift giving. I mean, Father's Day is big too, and there are other times of the year that we see spikes, but yeah, definitely holiday is a real thing. Holiday happens.
Yeah.
That's the lyric that we sort of always say is we're like, holiday happens. It's gonna happen again, and better be ready for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm hearing constantly from people. They're just like, yeah, I take a vacation in January. I just take it off because it's just like insane for most people. And most everybody I'm talking to is traveling, and you guys are lucky to not have to travel.
Yeah, no, we're not traveling a lot for North, which is nice.
Yeah, that's cool. We covered so much of this stuff already do you see anything that you want to speak to?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's, for us, I think the thing about starting this idea was, like, it definitely exceeded what we thought our expectations were for it. But it's been really fun to sort of live between two worlds a little bit. Like, we're living between the independent maker community and sort of a real professional e-com brand and direct to retail brand. And I think that we're able to blend those two worlds in a really nice way and work with great makers. And I think our whole premise with North is everything that we made is made here, which is a big commitment and a big challenge, especially as volumes get really high and as stuff gets more complicated. It's super expensive. But we are so excited to have awesome partners and great systems in place to be able to do that. Yeah. And still, make stuff in a really authentic way locally, celebrate those stories, but also, use our bigger skill sets into how to grow it to be something that's bigger than, again, we ever thought it could be.
Totally.
Yeah.
So when you say expensive, you mean the upfront cost you have to throw down to get products made to then hope they sell. Is that what you're talking about? And that grows constantly.
Yes, right? Absolutely, exponentially, right? Yeah. So I think the costs that go into making a glass are extreme. We have to have a custom CNC mold made. That's now the molds are made out of steel, and they're made by a machine shop here in town. And so we get steel molds made, and then we blow glass into the molds, and the glasses cost a lot. They're made by hand by artists here in Portland, and they're making thousands of glasses every month. And so you have, so now you're paying for inventory on thousands of glasses that you don't have orders for yet. So you're writing these giant checks to manage those inventories in hopes that they all sell. So you're making these investments, and then again, we've been doing well and it pans out, but it's definitely an expensive proposition that if you were to make it in China and you were to find a facility that could do it, you could make it for probably a 10th or 20th of the price.
Yeah, but your margins would probably be huge, so you'd be throwing down large quantities of money and you'd have more inventory,
which then you got to find a way to hustle to sell, and
then you can store it and then ship it across the ocean, which takes a long ass time, and then it hits customs and takes longer. So there's
and I think it's honestly, it's for us, it's not what we've spent our careers making products overseas, and it's really fun to work with a local community and make stuff here in a way that's amazing quality, better quality than anything that we can get anywhere else, and supporting our local community and people around here that are making great stuff. And I think for us that's the biggest distinction is that when people support North, they're supporting their local maker community, and they're supporting independent brands and the spirit of the true entrepreneurial spirit, which is fun with so many of the makers that you have on that are, you're supporting their vision, their hopes, and their dreams. And that's the really fun part of it, to really feel good about all all the steps in the process, and feel like we're working with great people along that whole way.
Yeah, that's awesome, man.
Yeah,
I'm glad you guys were able to really tap in and find all the resources you needed here in Portland.
it was surprising. Like, it was so funny when we were doing like the packaging thing. So we were like, oh, we'll make it. We do this. Came up with this design to do it in these little tubes, and so they're just little cardboard tubes. And so I was looking into different places that we could buy tubes, and I'm looking and I was like, I wonder if there's a Portland place that makes tubes. Sure enough, I find like the Pacific Paper Tube Company over off Columbia, over in Northeast, and they make those they make giant like sonotubes for like, you know, if you're setting like a foundation on a deck, those like concrete tubes. Yeah. And so I was like, could you make a little tube? And could you they were like, yeah, we can make little tubes. And so now we order tubes from the tube guy. And then it starts as rolls of craft paper, and it goes to this crazy machine, and they glue it up on a little chuck, and then they cut the tubes up, and then it's all right here.
Wow.
I think that's been the other thing that's been so amazing is if you just dig in to look, you're like, oh wait, I can buy canvas bags for the coasters that are made down the street. Like, there's people that do that, and I can find the guys that print the newsprint paper with the mountain topo print on it. Like, those guys are in South Portland. Yeah. And so you're like, you can find, they're all here. So I think a lot of people have just sort of gone to like, well, I guess I'll have to find somebody overseas to make this thing. Right. But the truth is, there's so much industry here. There's so many people that make each of these pieces and parts that you can find if you just dig a little bit. Yeah. I mean, and a lot of them are hard to find. But
I was going to say, that canvas bag thing seems like that'd be it's not a Google search. That's like a pretty specific kind of weird little thing.
You had to dig in. It's like the group that makes the little canvas bags, I think those guys are out of Ohio, I think. But they're parts bags for military, like for screws for things. Right. They call them parts bags. You know, but like, you know, and you're like, what's that thing called? That's the bag I'm looking for. Who makes that? You know, and then you go back and then you start to search like parts bag USA, like, you know, and so I just have a lot of these sort of cyclical research searches to find little things. But yes. I mean, that's the thing that's been so inspiring and interesting is like, if you look for it, like, you'd be surprised what you can find here. Mm-hmm. And that's what's, I think that'll be the future of North too, is that we're going to continue to do that and new categories and ideas as we continue to grow, because we're like, it works and it's super fun to like know that you're supporting a little factory making cardboard tubes up the street, and now we're ordering thousands of paper tubes from them, time and time again. So
yeah. Now, just real quick as we're ending here, I guess I was curious about, and we're talking about production, I was curious about the glass blowing company. You've given them a lot more business, and I imagine they're maxed out on what they can do. Did they have to purchase more equipment? Did they have to, like, how do you guarantee that you're going to be able to give them enough business for them to be able to invest in more equipment and keep up with your demands, as you probably are continuing to be like, hey, can you guys push it a little bit and make 100 more a month or whatever?
It's a good question. I think the team over at Elements they're an amazing glass studio. They're one of the biggest glass studios on the West Coast, actually.
Really?
And so they have a really big facility. And so when we did that tour back when I took the Cinco product design team there, we were just in awe of this giant building and all of this glass blowing equipment that they have. And they do some manufacturing glass blowing for a few other partners. And then they do a lot of custom work. And they used to do a lot of teaching, so they do a lot of classes and stuff there too. And so when we started, we were just the delinquents in the corner, just like well, we do a few things for these guys, but mostly we're busy on this other stuff. And as it's grown, we've been able to have dedicated teams, and depending on the demand and depending on the process of how they're blowing the glass, sometimes the teams are bigger, sometimes the teams are smaller. But they're really amazing at what they do, and they have a lot of bandwidth. And so sometimes we're pushing the bandwidth that they have available, but oftentimes they've got more than we need. Wow. So that's been really fortunate for us, is that we have a partner that has room to grow, and continues to want to grow with us and support us on this journey. And we have a really fluid dialogue with them on, how many glasses we think we're going to need next month, and how many people they're going to need on hand to be able to do that, and how many pallets of glass they need to buy to be able to make the cups. And so, you know, it's a pretty dynamic and constantly evolving conversation, but you know, I think a lot of transparency in communication with them has really helped. And really just truly being a good partner to them and understanding the challenges that they have as well, and us being willing to compromise when they're like, hey, we need to chill and do this other thing for a little bit. Are you guys good? Like, yeah, we're good for now, and then we can go back and forth on that. So but yeah, they're amazing, and they could make more, which is good for us. So we have a little bit of room to continue to push out. Yeah.
So overall, as this whole process, this thing you jumped into, has it been worth it for you?
Absolutely. Like, I think when I think all the way back to the, like, you know, making stickers in the basement days, like the concept of like, you can have an idea, if it's a good idea, and you check it with your friends, you continue to sort of test the waters along the way, and if it goes, you're like, now we've built a whole company that's amazing. You know, our 2 little daughters, Sophie and Lily, have been sort of a part of the process the whole way too, and like, nice. You know, they're as into it as we are, and so they're all, you know, when we come up and do a photo shoot for North, like, you know, Sophie and Lily are helping like think about what the props are going to be for the photo shoot, and like coming in with Pav and running around and helping, and so it's like it's really turned into a family business a little bit, both for Nick and his family, and for Lee and I and our girls, and so, yeah, I mean, it's exceeded our expectations in so many ways. And it's just so rewarding to, I think, to be able to make something that you can give to friends. Like, I sent you some glasses, and I was like, oh, he's going to be stoked, you know?
Yeah.
And to give somebody something and for them to be psyched about it, like, that's, I guess, at the root of what I love to do. All the way back to making stickers in the basement was like, that's why I did it.
Yeah.
I like to express my creativity through products and give them to people. And at Cinco, at the design studio, we get to do that in a strategic design sense, but we rarely get to make physical things that we get to hand somebody and, like, you know, cheers with the glass that we made, and that's a rad moment for us. So yeah, it's absolutely been worth it, and it's been really good.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, congrats.
Yeah. Oh, thank you.
Yeah. I love the story of how this company got started. A genuine interest in how things are made, how things are handcrafted, led to an idea that nobody had really ever done before, and to a product, and a couple of buddies coming together and creating a company. Really, really awesome and inspiring. I want to make sure I mention here that in February they launched a new pint glass, Central Oregon's Mount Bachelor. Really amazing mountain out here in Oregon. They also have a lot happening in May, which is super exciting. They have a new mountain coming out, as well as a couple of collabs, and they'll be back on Kickstarter, which is super exciting. So be sure to go to Instagram and follow them at North Drinkware, as well as sign up for their mailing list, northdrinkware.com. While you're on Instagram, be sure to follow Work Undone podcast as well, and check out the Work Undone website, workundone.com, for show notes and photographs and links to their website and their Instagram. It's the easiest way to do that. When you do find an amazing pint glass or other product from North Drinkware that you love, be sure to use the discount code WORKUNDONE, all one word, for 5% off. And of course, if you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to check out the rest of the episodes. There's 5 other ones to check out. Be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcast and leave a review if you feel so inclined. And big thanks to Needle Drop, local music licensing company, for providing the awesome music we're listening to in the background right now. And of course, thanks for listening. I appreciate your support.